Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like Diamonds, back again. Got my main man, Tony Acevedo, like avocado.
Sure,
What's
sounds
up,
good.
dude?
How's it going?
Good, man. I'm pumped about today. Talking about kayak fishing mistakes. If you don't know who Tony is, then that means you've probably never been on our YouTube channel or Insider Fishing, Insider Club community, etc. Tony has been a fishing coach and really the face of kayak fishing for Salt Strong for quite a few years. In fact, what kind of a big reason we're doing this podcast is one of the very first courses, that Salt Strong did. We produce these mastery courses. Think of it like if you've seen Masterclass, there's quite a few different companies out there, massive companies that team up with experts in whatever field it is and create these online master classes. What's really neat about them, right, Tony, unlike a DVD that you get in the mail, if it gets scratched or cracked or you lose it, it's kind of gone. That part's kind of cool. It's online, so you can access it anywhere, anytime, but it's also interactive, right? I mean, you're in there still now. That what the course is 4 years old, right?
Yeah, I've been with you guys since end of 2016, I believe.
Yeah. So, and
Oh,
you didn't do it right off the bat, but it's might be 4.5 years old.
yeah.
Really, really wild. And Tony's still in there right now. Every week, every month, however often questions come in, and it's like having a professor there that you can shoot a message to, and they get right back to you. And in many cases, go out on the water or back in the studio and film more tips, which is what happened here. So there's been some questions that have come up, and things obviously evolve in kayak fishing, any kind of fishing, with the tackle and even the type of equipment used with your kayak and accessories. And Tony went in and just added quite a few new videos to the course. And if you already have and own Kayak Fishing Mastery, Tony's original course, obviously you get all those videos for free. They're in your account. You'll see them in there when you log in today. But we wanted to go ahead and do a video slash podcast for everyone who is not invested in Tony's kayak course, to talk about just some general mistakes that he keeps seeing over and over again. It's the same stuff we see, just in general, right? Then we're talking about the 90-10. I mean, obviously a focus on spots. I know you're going to talk a little bit about simplicity and being a specialist and not having just too much stuff. And then a few other little nuances that, I mean, can make or break your day. There's nothing worse than investing money in kayak, right? Tony, these kayaks aren't cheap anymore.
Nope. I mean, nowadays there's some that are 4,500 bucks, I believe. So
Yeah. Remember at ICAST I guess it was 2 years ago, they didn't do it this past year. And Hobie had announced some new pedal drive system on steroids, and like all in $6,000.
yeah.
That was like the primo, like fully loaded $6,000. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So nothing worse than spending all that money, even if it's $1,000 kayak, it's still a lot of money. And then you have all the other tackle and accessories with it. And then to get out there and not catch any fish, it's frustrating. We've all been there. And so we want to do this podcast today to talk about some of the most common mistakes that you can pretty easily avoid to just increase your chances. That's the game of fishing, right? We're always just trying to get that one step up, that one leg up over the fish. And that's what we'll talk about today. So Tony, let's get right into it, dude. Are these in any particular order, these mistakes?
Not any particular order, more or less just common stuff that I see people, the mistakes I see them making.
Yep.
And right off the bat, like you were saying, kayaks can be expensive, but one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of people make is they invest way too much money up front, especially if you're starting out. And even, if you're an advanced kayak angler, I find myself still buying stuff that I don't need. So the nice thing about fishing from a kayak is that it's probably one of the least expensive ways as opposed to fishing from shore on foot to actually get on water and get on some fish. That's the nice thing about a kayak, just being able to get off the shoreline to get to that island that you see out in the middle that might have a nice flat on it. That'll increase your chances of catching fish. But going back to too much stuff, comes down to the gear. You don't want to have too much stuff on your kayak when you go out there, because you're going to just be fumbling around all day. That's going to hinder your fishing capabilities, your success on the water. If you have too many rods with you, you're going to be banging them around, making noise. If you have too much tackle, you're going to be switching out lures all day. You really don't need a lot. And even the kayak itself, you don't need anything flashy, expensive to get started out. I started out with a $400 kayak that was on sale, and I used that thing for a year, caught tons of fish on it. And then I slowly started upgrading just based on what I wanted. Now I have a Hobie Outback, which helps a ton just because it does have the pedals. If you're fishing in current, you're fishing in wind, that can help out. But when you get out there to get into kayak fishing, start small and then grow from there.
Did you buy yours new for 400, or was it was used kayak?
It
Would
was
you
new.
say okay, it was okay. Wow. That's a
Yeah, it was
heck of a
new,
deal.
$400. It was on sale. I pulled the trigger and never looked back.
It's tough to find a $400 kayak these days.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people will resell them. Like I said, they'll get into it and then they'll realize it's not for them and they'll put it for sale, because a lot of places won't take a return kayak just because it's been on the water, it's been used. So kind of on your own after you buy it.
Got it. So how many rods do you take out?
So I don't take any less than two and no more than three.
Okay.
Two is like my ideal, because if you only go out with one, if you lose it in the water, if it breaks, something happens, and you have nothing to fish with. And if you bring more than two, like I said, you're just going to be fumbling around. You might, be casting one rod and hit the other rod while you're casting, or I used to have the habit of putting them all out in front of me. Then I'd hook into a fish, and then I've got all this stuff in front of me, and I have to put the rod in the rod holder, get stuff situated. It's just a lot easier when you minimize.
So let's just say you're going to take three.
Yep.
Where do you store them? How are you keeping them out of the way?
So when I first started out, I had a milk crate with PVC pipe zip tied to it, and that was behind me in the rear tank, and I would just put them in there. Now I have rod holders. That way I can sort of move them around to where I want them to be. Because when you have like a fixed crate with PVC pipe in it, if you want the rods to be angled back, you can't do that. So it's nice to have some rod holders in the back where you can sort of manipulate the rod holder to have the rods where you want them to be.
And you keep them on a track?
Yeah, track systems are life changing. You can slide them back and forth, put them where you want, and you can also put all sorts of different things on them.
So I'm just trying to put myself in your kayak. So you're sitting down. Where are the rods? Like, where have you found? Because this is stuff that I'm curious about personally, because I don't kayak fish as much as you. Is there have you found like there's a perfect distance where you can still reach around and grab them, but also where they're not, get in the way every time you cast or set a hook?
So actually, contrary to what people may think, right behind you is the best spot, right behind your back. If you have them too far behind you, that's when they start getting in the way with casting. If they're straight up and down, that's better as well, because again, if they're angled back too much, you're going to hit them when you go make a cast. So if you can have them right up against the back of your seat, that's typically the best spot to have them.
Cool. That's super helpful. Now, what about your tackle management? I know we harp all the time about just a simple Plano. We don't care if it's Flambeau or Plano. We're not sponsored by any of these groups. We personally like these Plano waterproof ones. Are you bringing just a couple tackle trays? Like, what does your setup look like now?
So now that I've really simplified things, I keep one box. I have one waterproof box that is mostly hooks and jig heads. I'll take a couple packs of soft plastics, but the majority of my stuff is going to be terminal tackle, because you can use one soft plastic, but if you have different weights, different hook styles, you can use that same soft plastic under multiple different conditions, different depths, different areas of the water column. So you can, fish appropriately, hit the right spots where those fish are. If you have like just a spoon or something, you can't really control the depth because it's a fixed weight.
Yeah.
That's why I like to use soft plastics, have all kinds of hooks and jig heads.
Love it. And then leader line stuff. Where do you keep that?
I like to keep the little Berkeley Vanish spools, because they're really small and they're just easier to keep on the kayak. And I usually have 20 and 30 pound with me, and I keep them in the hatch that's right in front of me. There's a little kind of handy. There's like a little silicone webbing I just slide them into.
Simplicity specialist. Love it, dude. All right. So mistake number one is too much stuff and overbuying. Because we see that, right? We have, I don't know, 50 to 100 new members joining the Insider Club a day. And we're getting a lot of kayak anglers because, to your point, it's probably the most affordable way to get on the water in some type of vessel, right? You
Yep.
know, I'm not comparing it to wade fishing, obviously. And there's so many people that come in and they're like, yeah, I'm going to go buy the most expensive one. Um, let's talk about that a little bit more. So let's just say someone does have the money and they just like nice things. I get that. Should you, go test drive 5, 6 different ones? Like what have, because you've been through a ton of kayaks over the years. What have you found to be kind of the best way to do it to make sure you're not stuck with something that you don't really want?
It's really just asking around. If you can't find a dealer that does like that has demo days or something like that, just ask around. Word of mouth is definitely key. And you want to talk to people that have the same physical capabilities that you do. You don't want to be someone who has back injuries or knee injuries asking someone's opinion on a pedal kayak who's like an athlete, because it's going to be completely different. So if you can test drive them, definitely do so. That's why buying used is kind of good too, because most often you can ask that person to meet you at a lake or at the river or something to test run it.
And I would say you mentioned physical kind of stamina, strength. I would also say find someone who's similar size.
Yes.
You get someone who's 6'4". I mean, there's some kayaks that are not that comfortable for a tall person. And if you're just a really big dude, I saw one recently, where the guy had bought something that he couldn't stand up in. There's no way he was going to be able to stand up in it. And he's like, yeah, I got to sell this thing now. I can't even stand up in it without flipping the thing over. So that's important as well. Because I know you now, I've obviously anyone who's watched your videos, I mean, you spend a lot of time standing up. Once you obviously get to your spot, you're not
Yep.
not standing up and paddling out, but you spend a lot of time standing up because I mean, those extra feet, it's a massive advantage to be able to find fish and bait.
Yep. So so standing it has its advantages, but sitting down also has its advantages too. Depending on how high the sun is or how low it is, because you get that glare at a certain height that you're on the kayak. And sometimes when I'm sitting down, I can see stuff better depending on the lighting conditions. So, and if you're looking for like tailing fish and stuff like that, being lower to the surface of the water can actually help.
Cool. All right. So what's mistake number two?
So I had stealth, and that kind of comes down
Mm.
to having too much stuff as well. Because, like I said, if you're fumbling around, something lands on the hull of the kayak, it makes a lot of noise. And people don't realize that. I've just coughed too loudly before on the kayak and seen fish scatter. So being stealthy on the kayak is very important, especially because of how quiet a kayak can be when you get into a spot. Those fish don't know you're there. Then all of a sudden they hear a pair of pliers drop into the hole, and that can definitely spook the fish. So just be careful what you're doing. If you have to set your paddle down, do it gently. If you have an anchor pin, have somewhere to properly store it without having to make too much noise. Just be very aware of how much noise you're actually making.
And with your paddle, because I've made that mistake when I first got into kayak fishing. If you just get a little sloppy, your arms are tired, and that paddle hits the side of the kayak, that is super loud. And obviously, putting the paddle down to get
Yep.
you to turn around and get your rod to make a cast. Talk through that a little bit, because I think that's one of the areas I've seen people make the biggest mistake. Is you've found your area, you've done your research, you're an insider member, you've spent time on smartfishingtides.com, and you've picked out some good spots. And then all of a sudden you get there and you put your paddle down, or it's not strapped down, it falls in the water and you're fumbling around. Like, walk someone through what it looks like when you're approaching a spot in a perfect day. Like, how far away are you? Like, talk kind of through what that looks like. When are you putting your paddle down? Are you strapping it down? I'd love to hear what it looks like in the day of Tony on the water.
So when I had mainly a paddle kayak when I first started out, I never really stored the paddle. I always had it within reach. If I'm sitting down, I'll have it in my lap, have my knees slightly bent so it kind of just sits right in my lap, doesn't fall over, and make sure the paddle is the blades are flat. Usually when you're actually paddling from spot to spot, you want to have them feathered. Just makes it a little bit more aerodynamic when you're paddling. Also helps with splash. But keep it flat. That way the blades don't actually smack the water, and that's when they're gonna, paddle's gonna fall in the water, make a bunch of noise.
Mhm.
But I always have it within reach because while I'm fishing, that's gonna be how you adjust your position. So when you're in a paddle kayak, make sure you have it in your lap. When I'm standing up, paddle kayak or pedal kayak, I actually have a trick that I added into the course. It's using a holster on your belt or a rope or something like that, where you can actually place the paddle onto. So paddle is in my hand the whole time while I'm fishing. Then when I see fish, put the paddle in the holster, grab my rod, and I can cast to those fish. But if you're blind casting, that's where you're going to kind of have to, have it set aside, drift a little bit, start casting around. Then if you have to adjust your position, grab the paddle again.
Cool. Now, what about for the pedal? Because we started with paddle because let's face it, these pedal drives, they're amazing. I would say game changing for kayak anglers, but it's also really expensive. And for me, I mean, every one of us on our team started with a paddle first, just FYI. We did not go right into a pedal drive. We all started with an old school paddle just to get used to everything. And then and only then I would say move up to the pedal drive. And it could be 5 months, just depending how often you fish. And for some of you, life gets in the way. Like, man, I've only used this one time in 5 months, and it might not be worth going up to the next level. But let's talk about, if you have pedals, what are you doing differently? What are some of the ways that kind of spook fish with when you got a pedal system?
So the pedals, I mainly use the pedals just to get to where I'm going.
Mhm.
So if I'm going to a spot or I'm trying to come back to the launch from a spot, that's mainly when I'm using the pedals. Or if I'm fishing in current, deeper water, pedals definitely help you hold position better. But once I'm at my spot, I'm using the paddle. A lot of people don't bring a paddle with them on a pedal kayak, which is actually another mistake that we can add to the list there. But the pedals I'm only using to get to my spot. And I did have another kayak that had a pedal drive system that I used in shallow water, and it was just loud. It had a prop on it, and the pedal drives that have the prop are a little bit louder than the ones that have the fin type of system, which is like a Hobie. The fins are much quieter, but with the fins, I found that if you don't have them set right, the foot pedal placement, you can push them back or push them forward depending on your height. If you push them to their limit, where they max out, you're going to bang up against the hole, and that'll make noise, spook fish. So make sure they're set right. So when your legs are fully extended, you're not actually, maxed out, because it will make noise that way. And also, if you do get too shallow and they start dragging the bottom, that'll spook fish as well.
That's what I was going to ask next. I know you fish a lot of really shallow water. Are you always pulling them out? Or I know some of the fins, you can kind of lay them kind of flat and they're still somewhat quiet. What do you do when you're approaching a spot?
If I know I'm going to be in a spot for a while, I'll take them completely out, because when you are trying to paddle or stand up and paddle with the fins still in, it creates a lot of resistance. So it makes it tougher to paddle with the fins in. So when you pull them out, it helps with that. And if I'm in a spot where I'm just going to check it out really quick, with the Hobies, you can basically push the pedals apart and the fins come up flush to the hole, so you can fish shallow. And there's a bungee cord in the kayak that holds the pedals separated so the fins stay up. And I'll do that if I'm just checking out a spot really quick. That way I can go back out to deeper water and pedal to the next spot.
Yeah. I was smart of Hobie to do that, because that was not there on the very first rendition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. All right. So stealth is number 2. What's the third mistake that we're going to talk about today?
So it's really just planning your trip, spot selection. A lot of people, they'll go to the same spots over and over again. That's what I did when I first started kayak fishing, and my success wasn't really that great, because I would just go, okay, I know this spot. There's got to be fish there eventually. Let me just keep going there and trying it out. But what I realized is you can't fish very far in a kayak. You can't go very far. So you have to try different spots. You have to plan appropriately. You have to plan based on where you're launching from. You want to look at the satellite maps, try to find a launch location that is close to an area that looks good. Because if you just go out there and launch and hope it's a good spot, usually not going to work that well. So planning is very important.
And use paddling.com is right, one of the top sites there to find kayak launch spots pretty much anywhere in the South for sure. I've never used it on the other coast because I never fished over there, but
Yeah, they have
Texas to Virginia or New Jersey, it goes everywhere, right? Doesn't it?
yeah, it's all over the US,
Okay.
lakes, coastline, because what it is users go in there and they basically pin spots that they launch from, and they'll, write a description what it's like, if it's an actual boat ramp or if it's a dirt ramp, stuff like that. So I'll find a spot to launch on there, and then I'll cross reference it to a satellite image to see if there's good spots to fish around there.
Side tip, paddling.com is also a great place if you are wade fishing. To Tony's point, it's user generated content is really what it comes down to. So you have kayak anglers who are posting, and sometimes posting pictures and talking about the basically everything there, what it looks like. Most places that you can launch a kayak from safely are also places you can get out there and do a little wade fishing. Not all of them, obviously, but a big chunk of them are. So you can actually use paddling.com to get some wade fishing spots. So I want to spend some more time on this because it's critical. We hammer home the 90-10 zone. If you don't know what that is, it's 90% of all feeding fish at any given time can be found in just 10% of the water. So if you took a drone up, which we've done multiple times in little workshops and webinars, and let's just say everything you can see in the drone footage in that video in the frame is 100%. And in almost every single scenario, I think it actually is every single scenario, all the fish are like in the 10% of that overall frame. It's crazy. And they even move together in little schools and stuff. And so once you can find, and that this goes, if you're in a small little mangrove to an oyster bar to like, a couple mile radius. And it's the same offshore fishing, right? I mean, once you find the schools out there, usually they're all in the same area. So we hammer that home. It's so critical because you can invest $5,000 in a kayak and have all the latest rods and reels. And if you're in a dead zone, you're just not going to catch fish, and it's going to be a long day. And yeah, you might get a little bit of a workout, but we invest in this stuff because we want to catch fish. I know Tony, super competitive. We want to win. We want to catch fish. And the days where you go out there for 8 hours and don't catch much or just a catfish, it's brutal, especially here in the summertime.
Yep.
So I love to hear your game plan. What do you use in terms of, depending on where you are? Obviously tides can be very important or not as important if you're in the lagoon where you fish a lot, but you still got wind, which is, a big player. You've obviously got weather that you need to be aware of.
Yep.
But so talk about, what do you do on a pre-trip planning? For those that don't know, Tony lives outside of Orlando, which is like dead in the center of Florida. So when he makes a trip over to either coast, like it's got to count, like, right? It's not like you just walk in
Yep.
your backyard and wet a line real quick. I mean, he's like, man, I'm not going to go waste my entire day and not catch fish. So I'd love to hear how you pre-trip plan and really what you're looking for, and add like how many spots do you have, like all that stuff.
Yeah. So first thing I always look at is the wind. Doesn't matter what time of year it is. I know we teach, in the summertime, you should be looking for areas that are somewhat getting hit by the wind, but I personally like to stay out of the wind throughout all year long, just because it makes it way easier to fish.
Yeah.
There are some other things you still want to, look for. If you are getting out of the wind, you want that water to be moving. So if you have the wind wrapping around a point, those are the types of areas I'm looking for in the summertime, just because it helps aerate that water, keeps that water moving if it is out of the wind, if you do have wind protection on that shoreline. But as far as the spot itself, I'm looking for an area that I can fish pretty much once I get on the water, because most spots I get to, as soon as I get on the water, I'm going maybe half mile at most, and then I'm going to be fishing the whole time. So you want to look for a spot or a shoreline that has multiple different areas that you can hit along the way. What you don't want to do is pick a spot that only has one thing that looks good, because you might end up wasting your time. Most likely will end up wasting your time in that kind of situation. So make sure you have an area where you can maximize structure. You know, if you have oyster bars that are close to a shoreline and it's surrounded by a grass flat, those are things you want to look for. You don't want to look for a shoreline that just has one little creek coming out of it, because you're probably going to waste your time there. So in addition to that, I'll have multiple launch areas picked out based on the wind. So for
like how
example,
many?
minimum of 3
Okay.
usually. And I want to have them pretty close to each other. That way, if I do have to load up and go somewhere else, it's not going to, take the whole day to do so.
Yep.
So me, for example, I fish Mosquito Lagoon, Indian River, Banana River. They all face north to south. So if we have a north or a south wind, it's kind of tough anywhere out there. If we have an east or a west wind, let's say we have a west wind, I'm mostly going to be picking spots that are on a west shoreline, just because you're going to be out of that wind. And just the opposite, east wind, I'll be on the east side. And another thing with the wind too is you don't want to be fighting that wind to get back. What I like to do is fight the wind if I have to get to a spot, and then at the end of the day, I can use that wind to get back when you're tired. So that's what I would be doing.
That's great. I want to talk about electronics, because that's another one that comes up a lot. So when you go out, you pick your spots, right? And you use smart fishing tides. You're using the insider community, some of the intel there. Are you just using your phone? I'm looking for mine. I don't even know where it is. What do I do? What do I do? Where's my? Are you using your phone, or do you actually have some type of electronics, GPS, fish finder?
So I'm mostly using my phone. I did have a fish finder, but the GPS doesn't, unless it's a satellite map. If you invest in a fish finder that can, hold the satellite maps on there, it's not really worth it, in my opinion. So the phone's the way to go. A lot of people have a tough time seeing their phone when they're on the water. What I recommend doing is bringing a towel with you, and you basically anchor up somewhere if you have to look for it. If you have to look at your phone, don't be sitting in the middle of a channel trying to look at your phone on a kayak, because a lot of boaters may not see you. So just grab a towel, throw it over your head, and look at your phone underneath a towel. That'll help block the sunlight. And also, what I've been doing lately is actually just holding your phone up to the sun with the phone hit, or the sun hitting the phone in the back. That helps see the screen as well, because it blocks the sun from, hitting the screen.
Cool. It's a good one. All right. I want to throw another one out there. This is another mistake while we're talking about phones. One of it's something about fishing. Some of us are there to go out there and catch dinner. In general, though, I think most people, it's the sport, right? It's the, being out in the water and just being out in nature, and hopefully to get a tight line and catch something. And then you want to document it, right? Because let's face it, no picture of it didn't exist, didn't happen. But one of the biggest mistakes we see all over Instagram, all over Facebook, and even some in our insider community is the horrible pictures that can happen when you're out there fishing by yourself in a kayak. And I know you get this question a lot. What have you found is one of the better ways to avoid the mistake of having a horrible picture where you'd see someone doing a selfie? And it's just, even, in most cases, better for the fish as well, versus trying to hold up with one hand and take a selfie and flopping everywhere. What have you found is a good way to get great solid pictures?
So with the phone, the best thing to do is get yourself a good phone mount for the kayak. Ram Mount sells some really good mounts for your phone, and you have to kind of play with it to get it in the right position. Like you said, you don't want it too close, or you're going to have just the fish's head in the picture with your fingers. So make sure it's far enough away that you can get a good picture. And pretty much all these phones nowadays have timers on them, anywhere from like 5 to 10 seconds. Put it on the 10-second one so you have enough time to get situated. And I believe some phones can get hooked up to like a Bluetooth little remote now too. So if you wanted to snap a picture that way, that can help. But if you have the money, I would highly recommend investing in a GoPro. I mean, when I take my pictures, or the pictures that you see me post, I'm basically just recording video the whole time when I hold the fish up. That way you can hold it different ways, get it back in the water. And then when I get home, I could take screenshots from that video, pull some good pictures out. And also keep a towel handy to keep your lens and your phone and everything clean,
Yep.
dry. That's what messes up most pictures and videos.
Yeah, you don't want a big old piece of salt, because that water gets salt water and it dries on there, and it's like, because we've had that happen on our nice camera sometimes. You're like, oh, I didn't see that water spot. Now it's just this big blur.
Yep.
Cool, man. Super helpful. So, if you made it this far and you don't own Kayak Fishing Mastery, I would highly urge you to do it. We could sit here forever and talk about all the mistakes. There's something cool about being in the course. And I think a good analogy is with anything, that you see out there on YouTube. There's great videos. We put out a ton of free content out there on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, but it's always just pieces, right? And maybe you've been, even with this video, right? I mean, we talked about 3 mistakes, but you still got in the water like, oh man, like, what about this and what about this? And that's why we come up with these master courses. It's like completely comprehensive. Starting, a big part of it is finding the right spot, so you get to see some stuff that we don't share there publicly on how to find great spots for kayak anglers in particular. Then we talk about the when, right? Meaning in terms of the times of year, moon phases, tides, etc. And then a lot of the what, like what to use tackle wise, how to keep it simple. Here's all you really need to know and to use to catch inshore slams, redfish, speckled trout, snook, etc. And then a lot of the how, right? The how to use it to maximize strikes. And so you get all Tony's best stuff. And I think the coolest part, I said earlier, it's interactive. You get to ask questions and you can see all the other students. I don't know how many tens of thousands of people have bought this course, but it's a high number. Definitely one of our top selling courses, and continues. People buy it every day just because it works. And it's, once again, if you go through it, I think it's 3 hours ish total.
Um, Around that, yeah. I think there's over 30 to 40 videos in there.
Yep. And so they're all obviously, broken up in anywhere from 5 minutes to, 10 Most of them are not very long. And that way you can get through it quickly, take your notes, and then ask questions if you need to right below every video, and then move on to the next one. So about 3 hours, I mean, you're going to get decades worth of kayak fishing knowledge. And if you don't think it's great, we have 100% money back guarantee on it. Anytime in the first year, if you don't think, man, like this is the best money I've ever spent on kayak fishing, and it's taking your game up a level, if that doesn't happen, then shoot, we'll give you your money back. No questions asked. But we know you're going to love it. Tens of thousands of other inshore anglers have invested in it and absolutely loved it. And it's pretty awesome. And it's all at saltstrong.com. I believe it's /product. Shame on me, I don't have that in front of me. But if you go to saltstrong.com, up at the top, you'll see products, and then it's under courses. And then you see all of our mastery courses there, and just look for the one with it's a green cover, right, Tony, with the kayaks on it?
Yep.
Yep.
It's Kayak Fishing Mastery.
Kayak Fishing Mastery. And obviously, if you're watching this on the YouTube or listening via podcast or on our blog, we will put a link in the show notes. And you can get in there today. Instant access. And once again, it is interactive online. You can use it, watch it, even while you're out in the water, which is pretty cool. Because anywhere there's internet, you can watch this thing and watch it over and over and over again. You get lifetime access, which is another cool piece. So once again, the people who bought it 4 years ago are still getting all the free updates today. So once you're in there for life.
Yep. Nice thing about it too, like you said, when you ask a question on a video, come straight to my email. I get in there, answer it for you. So it's almost direct access to me.
It's like having Tony in your back pocket, but without that uncomfortable feeling with all his muscles. Cool, man. Well, this is good, dude. I'm pumped to go see the changes as well. I know you've been working on a lot of these new videos for a while, so I'm going to go check them out myself. I haven't even seen them yet. So
sounds good. Still adding to the list as well. So
Kayak Fishing Mastery. Yeah. And speaking of that, if you currently do own it and there's anything you want us to go out there and film, let us know. We love going out and adding on to these. We did the same thing with the Inshore Slammer. That's another one of our, so Inshore Slammer, Redfish Mastery, and the Kayak Fishing Mastery are our top 3 sellers. Insiders now, if you're an insider member, you get a couple of courses for free, not those. But in terms of people like actually investing real hard, earn money into those courses, those are the 3. And we've made updates to all of them. The Kayak Fishing Mastery happens to be the latest and greatest. So go check it out if you already have access to that. If you've bought it in the past, and if not, get in there today and then ask questions. Let us know if there's anything you want us to go out there and film. We would be glad to do it. So Tony, this is super helpful. I know you cover a lot more of the kind of big mistakes. A lot of it is in positioning as well. We
Yep.
barely touched on that's a massive one, is how you approach and position your kayak to catch fish. I mean, that if you just watch those videos alone with like how to find spots, it is well worth the price of admission. Really, really awesome stuff. So, brother, I appreciate you. And man, I guess I'll see you in here shortly. We're gonna have a little team event. We haven't all seen each other in a while, and our team has grown quite a bit. And we got Courtney, who just did some really amazing surf fishing stuff. And I don't think you haven't met Courtney yet, have you?
Not in person, no.
Yeah, so we have team members who haven't even met yet. So we are all going to have a little meetup and probably have a little casting contest and some other fun stuff. So we'll put a little post for all you insiders, you get to see behind the scenes of our team building event there. Otherwise, guys, we will talk to you on the next episode. We out. Peace.
Take it easy.